All right. So, yeah, my Scott project to talk about, the first project to talk about is a bobcat blade replacement. So, some bobcat blades have a bolt-on pattern. You can just get it replaced and bolted on. Ours, of course, was not bolt. It was. All right. This is the old blade. I didn't get a picture of the old bucket, the bucket with the old blade attached, but my older son Luke and I took this project on as an opportunity to do some kind of heavyweight metal fabrication and help him get some more stick time doing stick welding. So this is the old blade, which you can see it's pretty well worn down. And if you look along it didn't actually come out in the picture, but the blade itself was quite wavy. And that happens when you are not mindful of welding on a new blade with the heat input, and it causes the blade to warp. Even heavyweight metal will warp as you're putting it on. And so that was one of the parts of this project. We need to be very careful of how we weld it, the heat input. And so it turns out there's this company called Vevor, which is basically imports things from China and does local shipping. That at the time we were looking for a new blade was selling free shipping bucket blades, a bucket cutting edge. And so we bought a bucket cutting edge. I don't remember. We paid something slightly less than the 164 for like an 8-inch by 3/4 inch thick by probably 7-foot blade, more than what we need. And we weren't sure what was going to come for the free shipping of that, which is just an insane acquisition. And it came and it was a piece of real metal. And so great. Actually, I would endorse the Vevor bucket cutting edges. They aren't hard, but a lot of times you'll buy these blades and they'll be hard to seal. This was very, very soft. And as a result, we'll have to do some hard facing eventually when we start to get some wear. But we acquired a new blade from Vevor, replaced this. Here's the blade itself. It came in essence basically, I think it'd say it was painted. It was maybe like, it was a very heavyweight coating anyway. We stripped some of that off because we didn't want to have to weld through it. And here you can see us cutting the blade to length in the drop bandsaw. And again, we tested for hardness of the blade before we cut it because you easily ruin the blade if it was hardened, but it was not hardened. So we wanted the main blade, and then we wanted a couple of side pieces for it. Here's my son Luke. You can see that we tacked on the bucket. As is typical of sector projects, we needed to use a plasma. We wanted to cut off the old blade. Could have used oxytorch for that. But Chris says, oh, hey, I've got this big plasma cutter up in the upstairs. It's been totally untested, and it'd be great if we knew if that thing worked. So we hauled down this larger than a mini fridge size Lincoln plasma cutter. A little bit of work to jumper it up to run off of the power that we've got here, and a little bit of work on the air regulator was leaky. But so in the sort of like winding route of sector projects, we got the plasma cutter working. Worked great to cut the old blade off. So you can see here we've got space for the side notches, and then we tacked in the new blade, and we were very careful to really aggressively tack the thing first, top and bottom, so that we didn't have, hopefully minimize the heat distortion. And additionally, one of the difficulties of this project is this blade's seen some abuse. You can see on this left side, as we're looking at the blade here, something really traumatic happened to it at some point. And it was, so the blade itself, I don't know, Chris, you were never able to really kind of square anything with it. The bucket itself was a little askew. So we needed to make sure that the bucket was straight, and that the blade, as we put it on, was basically indexed to on the back of the blade. There's a system for attachment for a bobcat. So you want to index the front of the blade so it's straight and level with the back of the blade there. So we did some creative work with some pieces of wood to scaffold up a way to determine if the front of the blade was square in the multi dimensions with the back of the blade where it was attaching. And yet to be determined how square it actually is. We just finished this project today, so we haven't actually put it on and kind of tipped it and ran it to see how square it is, but we think it's actually pretty good. So there's a closer view of kind of some of the stitching, which we did. You can see there the MIG welder on the right side, and the bottom there, and us folding the sides on. So you can see here the first bit of the sides. So for the actual welding of this, here's my son up on the welding table outside. We're doing stick welding because generally speaking, you can get really good deep penetration on whatever kind of steel with stick welding. We cleaned this stuff up pretty good. We got all the rust off it, ground down to clean metal, but when you want really good penetration and you want structural strength, stick welding is the way to do it. We stick welded all the beams in this building, 7018 structural steel, and so we're stick welding the blade onto the bucket with 7018 structural steel. So it's an old skill, it's still a very relevant skill from my perspective, and so it was a fun project to work with my son and show him how to stick weld. There was enough stick welding to be done where he really got some serious time behind it and was able to go. So you can see him welding here. You can see it's getting orange hot. This 7018, we like to run it just as hard as you can run it, basically. And this is the cover pass on a multi-pass weld for the side of the blade. Basically, multiple stringer passes, so multiple just straight line stick welds, and then a cover pass over. So you kind of get a sense for the process there. And then you end up with, okay, this, in this case, very heavy. We tend to overweld things here, but hey, why not? You can use the practice. It's not going to come apart. And so that's one of the corners. And here you can see a very strange perspective on the finished bucket because it's actually sitting sideways down by the carbate. But we have a fully welded and all to go. Yeah, so any questions on the bobcat? Yeah.
So you said it's a softer steel. I mean, so does that make the fabrication harder?
No, it actually was. It actually was easier for us because we were able to cut the parts we needed just on the bandsaw instead of having to grind it like that. So
it's really just fucking code.
No, the welding would have been fine either way.
Yeah. How did you do like the strip weld in the future?
We will. So we inherited what they call hard facing rod. So there's rod that you weld on, and then when it cools, it becomes very hard. And you can see like YouTube videos of people doing cool patterns on buckets and stuff like that to sort of what they call hard face, which is you're putting on a hardened surface. So instead of stripping down the rest of the blade, I thought we'd wait for it to get a little bit of wear first, just naturally, and then we'll use some of that hard facing rod so that we don't have to be doing this again in 5 years because it was very painful. Sounds so simple conceptually. Oh, replace the cutting blade on the bucket, great. But there's actually quite a bit of work to it, get it all lined up and get the whole thing cut off. There was a significant amount of welding.
I was waiting for Scott to punt and hey, I saw on Craigslist you can just buy a bucket for like $1,000.
Oh yeah, it was probably 80 or 90 pounds. The 7 foot of it, when we got it down to the 5 feet for the bucket, it still was probably 60 pounds, 60 or 70. Not much heavier than what we cut on.
And they're selling it with free shipping?
Yeah. It's insane. It's crazy. Yeah. It just came. No, it didn't come from. It came from like UPS or something like that.
Yeah,
just in a very minimal cardboard sleeve.
If you just went out to the metal place and bought a fucking metal,
that's
way
more expensive.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it'd be probably it'd be more. And ironically, we had originally started by using the OxyTorch to cut a bevel on the front of a piece that we had that was much smaller. but we decided to pump.
That's the same issue. It's way more work done about
Yeah.
Will that be used to move snow?
Yep.
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Can I use that to move snow? That looks like so much fun.
It's fun the first time. So yeah,
I just want to try it once. I want to use a sweeper thing.
I have a follow-up
Can't
question.
tell that.
A lot of these shovels sometimes have that high cross-linked polyethylene, but there's a name for it, high density.
Oh,
They
like
use
a
on
spray
snow plows, yeah, to try to allow it to scrape areas that are irregular, it doesn't correct it.
Yeah,
Can
so
you put that on here?
we could, I guess, in theory, do something like that. With the big brush we've got, it's never really a need for us to plow snow with this thing. Well, I guess I'll defer to Chris. Like, we brush to clear it, and then this is to move the pile. But we do need to put holes in this. We've got 2 digging teeth that go onto the blade, and we need to use a bag drill and drill a couple holes, or 4 holes for that.
I thought Mark dug all the holes around there.
His kids.
No, I punish my children with digging projects around here. It's like, oh yeah, you guys have played Minecraft. We just this is the 2 blocks of dirt. How hard can that be? Here you can see the holes for the teeth. And I haven't actually punished my children. Yeah. All right. Other questions on the bobcat?
How many sticks of weld you burned through? It looked like you just had a little section.
Oh yeah. So we out of string here, we might get that much. We used 3/32 rod, which for what we needed, it was fine. Small on the small side. But we used about we used about 2.5 pounds probably of 3/32. No. Are those cans are 5?
great question.
I think the cans are. So we think we use 5 pounds.
The bucket is notably heavier now.
Yeah.
It's weighty. It's good. All right. Thanks, Scott.
All right. Can I do my next presentation? It'll be.
I'd hold off because we might hold off for that for today.
Oh, okay.
We might skip the. Well, we might give the. Because I think we got more presentations.
Okay. Well, there's kind of a call for action. I can do it in 2 minutes if you want.
It's too late.
Boss says no.
Wow, and we'll see. We guys take votes. Well, I mean, on accident every now and again. I just gotta give EJ permission to share real quick. Yeah, that's fine too. Yep. Hey Scott, how do I let people share to hear things blocked? Is that a security setting?
The co-host should let them share.
No, participants are good. Can you share? Does it work? Oh, hang on, I gotta stop my share. EJ, that's probably I wasn't working because we were sharing.
What was that?
We were sharing, so I probably wouldn't let you share at the same time.
Well, it said ask host to let you share.
Yeah, because we were host and sharing.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so you're good. Yeah, cool.
Okay.
All right, take it away.
Hey. Last minute presentation submission here. Sorry to kick off that other presentation we're gonna give. I'm David. I'm in Wisconsin for the summer, and I presented a couple months ago over Zoom about this daylight clock. If anyone remembers that. So I got a quick update on that. Still kind of in pre-production phase on this project, but just wanted to share my update. So here's the iOS app that I did not make. This is an example of daylight clock. So my idea was I was going to make this on e-paper. I got my e-paper working. I built a font that shows the digits. I was going to start debugging, try to attach a GPS receiver and put a GPS signal on the e-paper screen there. But I got to thinking that the e-paper just doesn't look. This would be really cool if this was like just a purely mechanical display you know, more like this, but like, you know, hanging on the wall using like, you know, some bright materials. So, I mean, I looked into, you know, how clocks work. How do they have the different arms spinning? We've got like 2 axles. You know, zoom this, yeah. So, you know, they have like concentric spindles or axles there. So maybe we could do that with like 4 colored wheels or something. Maybe this isn't so difficult to do mechanically. When I was here a month ago, saw all the metal tools here and got inspired, like, hey, maybe we can like actually fabricate this thing in metal, or I guess it could be plastic as a first step. That would be pretty cool. I was wandering around the neighborhood and I came by this clock shop that's not far from here. I think it's called Clock Shop, and they had a bunch of clocks, but one of them, and the guy there was like working like fixing clocks. They had tons of old clocks. They had a grandfather clock that's like taller than this. It's incredible. Didn't have a price tag on it. Some of the other clocks were like $7,500. Anyway, this is one of the clocks they have, which is like this giant gearing mechanism and then this tiny little clock on the front. But yeah, I mean, this isn't rocket science. You can build a clock. So, next slide. So I could like attach some motors to, some gears and like move some arms around, but on a clock, you need to precisely position things. So how to do that? I guess Hall effect sensors is a way to know like exactly where some stuff is. This is an animation I found of Hall effect sensor on the computers. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, I made this little tiny paper prototype too with Post-it notes, just to like visualize how you can actually like do this. You know, so it seems to be viable mechanically to like do this mechanically, have this display. It's hard to operate this one, but yeah, there it is. So that's where I'm at. Thanks for.
You might really use stepper motors to get incremental movement, then you wouldn't have to worry so much with the Hall effect necessarily where the pieces are.
Yeah, I don't know much about motors. I guess some of them there's stepper or the other one.
Like just to open the piece of motor.
So do they know like how? Not sure.
So stepper motors are what runs like a 3D printer, and so they move incrementally. You can get different degrees per step, basically.
So you know like the exact relative change, but you know the absolute position.
You know, you have to just set the absolute position once, and from then on, as long as it doesn't get hit or bumped or stopped, you know where it is. Yeah, you can go into the coders too, obviously. Those would be fancier, but if you're not minding the software side of it, it would be hard to integrate. Just you don't like software, it's a pain to close it.
I think I'm better at the software than
you could also just beat up Jerry, because Jerry makes giant spinning things that would outlight, but you could have it. But Jerry could totally show you how his stuff works, because he's got that all sorted out.
Except when it blows a fuse.
Well, his Linus it's only the printers. Yeah.
The next most ambitious way to do it is like purely mechanically using like an oscillator and like some crazy gear. You have to like have 2 gears that can set to like set the latitude and longitude. I don't know if this is possible to like create a sine wave mechanically. I mean, it must be, but
yeah, you can compute with cams, certain cams that basically find codes in the gear, and then that'll be locked together. Yes, give a certain location.
Yeah, I mean, all this. There used to be crazy wristwatches that would show time of day and all sorts of like solar, lunar, all sorts of calendars, because they did it all mechanically originally, and obviously now we're cheating this
you know, this you're researching or investigating could be applied to a tracking photovoltaic array. you know, if you connected the wheel that is in the front of the trailer, in my case, the art farm, and you let that thing move the trailer, rotate the trailer, and then also lift and you know, you could keep it at 45 and 50 during the summer. Anyway, I'm looking for that long term stuff. I will be interested when we get to solve it.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions from anybody else? Cool. Have you seen the 3D printed blocks? The 3D printed clock where it shows the time of day based on just setting it, and then it's the light shines through to tell you, like the telephone.
It's like they print slots and pocket plastic. And then but it only it's only 12.
Yeah, it's this interference conference,
But it's digital displayed as a panel
from the sun.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they're on the thing reverse. I'll find them. Any other questions, comments, suggestions? All right, thank you.
Look at my computer.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
Scott couldn't use this time, man.
So you do a carpet quick like you do.
Are you ready?
I have no idea. I think it worked.
Yeah.
There's practice demos, there's well practice demos.
We gave Jim a thing,
And then there's stuff you find on the curve.
he's never used it in his life, but he's about to get a lot now.
No,
I'll give you a cord, yeah. This is a
Well, that's what we do.
We got the bucket.
Nobody ready?
Oh, you're ready. I was just getting Jim for when you're finished here, yeah.
Someone did it. Before the talk, he's like, yeah, I have no idea. He did it. He's like, it's about the process.
And then you
Yeah, there are, you get like. Eventually, we'll shoot.
Share screen.
It's a little weird, but it's there.
All right.
So you should be on. Yes.
Hi, my name is EJ, and I'm going to be talking about language tonight and AI, which is sort of the same thing I talked about last time, but this is a slightly different angle on it. So tonight I'm going to be talking about a family called the Zucchinis. There's Alice and Bob, and they have a 12-year-old kid named Charlie. And Charlie has a dog named Bingo. And I've talked about the fact that language is one-dimensional. It's just a big long line of words from the beginning of the story all the way through the end. One big long line of words. But that ideas are like multi-dimensional. And tonight I'm hoping to make that a little bit more concrete. And so this story of Alice and Bob and their kid and their dog, I would argue has the shape of a Y. So up here we can see the two parents of the kid. The kid has that Y, that's not an English Y. That's not a Y that emerges because we're talking in English. And later I'm hoping to have Jerry's help. We're going to translate this whole story into Chinese, and he's going to change the story. And hopefully what's going to happen is the shape of this Y, even though it's going to be Chinese and none of us are going to understand what it's about, the shape of the Y is going to change like this. In this case, this Y is a Y because Bingo is Charlie's dog. But if instead Bingo was Bob's dog, the shape of that diagram changes. And it's more like an upside down N here. And if it was Alice, it might have been a regular N. But the key is that it's not a Y because the story has changed. And so I'm going to switch it back to the way it originally was. And what I'm going to point out here is I've also talked about the notion of a single source of truth. And again, here we have an example where on the right here, this picture is what I would call a single source of truth. Because each piece of information only appeared once. You'll notice the name Charlie appears here. If I could double click on it and change it to Mark, That's the only place that appears. There is nowhere else that can possibly create ambiguity. Whereas over here, we got Charlie and Charlie and Charlie and Charlie. It appears again and again and again. If any one of those were Charlie X, suddenly there'd be ambiguity. Like, what is that about? And how do you relate that information to the rest of it? So this is language, and this language is a description of this picture. But we can just look at the picture. If the picture is correct, we see his parents, Charlie, his dog, white fluffy dog. Because this picture was created from this language without knowing the language, without reading the language, without thinking or understanding the language, I can be confident that this language describes what I imagine as the story in my head. So what we can do, and this is where the AI will come in. I'm going to go to ChatGPT, and I'm just going to take this description of the situation. I'm going to paste it in. I'm going to say, can you describe this in English? And here we have a description. Sure. Bob represents a person named Bob. Hair is set to white. So this is a fairly technical description. I'm going to hit regenerate. Bob is a person with white hair. Alice is a person with red hair. Charlie is a 12-year-old person. Bingo is a fluffy white dog. Breed not specified. And then it describes the relationships. I could sit here and hit regenerate over and over and over again. And each of these very lengthy descriptions describe that little Y. Two people, Charlie's their kid, and they have a dog. Lots of different ways. I could literally just hit here. There are essentially an infinite number of different linguistic ways to describe this situation, but all of them just create that little Y. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to say, can you describe this in Chinese? And it's going to create, can you describe this? Well, so here's something I'm actually talking about. This is a live demo. We're working with an unpredictable agent, and anything that happens is essentially what I'm talking about. So this is an example where something it misunderstood. I'm just going to be clear. So what's going to happen when he makes the change in Chinese? It's either going to understand what he asked or it's not. And we're going to all know whether it understood us by the shape of the picture. It's either going to still create a Y or it will create an M. So I'm going to change this to describe this family. Describe this family in Chinese. So I'm going to just update it. That doesn't look quite long enough for all of that information. Maybe you can confirm whether it's complete or not. Yeah, I want to be, please be complete and accurate. Let's do that. Okay, so here we have a description in Chinese that I don't understand. And I'm going to go, because I don't speak Chinese. Does anybody else here speak Chinese? Other than Jerry? All right.
Jerry, you guys make shit up. You can like this.
So I'm going to paste this in. So we're in a completely new chat window. It has no information about that previous chat. The only thing it has is this little blob of Chinese that it wrote. And hopefully it has accurately described the family. And what I'm going to actually do, just to be precise, before we start making changes, I'm going to say, can you please describe this still in Chinese, but using a JSON format? What was that?
You have to say please.
I can talk about that if there's time. It sounds like there's not going to be time, and if there's 2 minutes extra, I'm going to they say please. So it has, again, described some information which I can't verify because I don't speak Chinese. But before we go further, in fact, let's before I have you make a change, let's confirm we still have a Y. So does this look right to you?
Yeah, that's right.
It looks right? Okay. So I'm just going to say, can you please write a plant text script to describe this information? Each family member should be an entity. Please use style relationships, not use macros or classes. Just get to it. Okay. And it's going to write a little script for us. And I'm going to take this script without reading it. And I'm going to go to planttext.com. I'm going to paste in the script, and we still get a Y. So it seems like at this point it's still on track. But what I'm interested to do now is to have Jerry clarify that actually bingo is Bob's dog, not Charlie's dog.
Jerry, while you're doing this, swap out the entire keyboard.
Sorry,
No, I mean like swap the OS. When I was in school, in grad school, we had an Italian, and the guys, the technicians would come daily, and the computer language was all swapped over. This was like before you could easily figure out what the settings was. Yeah, that was rough.
All right, switch. All right. So now he has told it some information again in a language I don't understand. But if it worked, what's going to happen is that I can take this script that it now has written, and if we update this, we now get the end that we expect. And so without actually knowing any of the words, we can get information and validation about what's being discussed by tracking not a linguistic description, not tracking an English description or Chinese description, because we could keep doing this. And if we had a big team of people with lots of different people speaking different languages, usually what's happening is you're translating one person's thoughts into, let's say, English, and then everybody else just gets a sort of broken translation of that English description. And then if you have a second language and a third language, it just gets more and more complicated. It's like the Tower of Babel. It's like a game of telephone. So in this case, what
how many Jerrys you have.
What was that?
It's dependent upon how many Jerrys you have.
If you're trying to do it as language, exactly. It relies on Jerry being available before you know anything about it. Because he has to read all the words and confirm, yes, in Chinese, at least my understanding of it, this matches what we're trying to say. What this lets us do is see the structure of the idea itself and confirm there are not two parents with a kid where the kid owns the dog. That is not what's being described there, independent of the words. Totally independent. And ChatGPT clearly doesn't think in English or JSON or Python or Mandarin or any particular language. It thinks in terms of knowledge. It thinks in terms of the structure of Mandarin.
The internet is all grumpy that apparently ChatGPT 4 is compared to something else. Have you had that experience or not? Is it dumber than it used to be, or does that not your perception?
My perception, since it first came on, is that their demand has usually been lagging. Their ability to satisfy demand has usually been lacking behind their ability to satisfy it, behind what's actually there. And so they are constantly adjusting what ChatGPT 3.5 is and what ChatGPT 4 is. Literally daily. So they're not, it's not quite that, but they're definitely changing the rules. They definitely have a lot of runtime control over exactly how it behaves. And so they basically get to control that starting point and how it answers and how completely, and they control every single parameter. And so, and it's a black box. So yeah, it definitely is, and definitely fluctuates like literally. When they first came out with the API was theoretically ChatGPT 3.5, but was definitely remarkably stupider in an attempt to make it safer. So they clearly didn't know exactly what was going to happen, and they just dialed up the safety knob to 10. And so it just behaved in a totally different way than 3.5, where, and I may have talked about this last time, as demo I was doing, uses rock, paper, scissors. Rock beats scissors, scissors beat paper, paper beats rock. That's how it works. And I tried in my demo, I would have it reverse that way. Because it can draw a picture one way, And then I can say, please reverse it. And you can draw it the other way. It's just a kid's game. And with the API, with 3.5, I would tell it to reverse it. It would say, no, that's not. Very, I'm sorry, Dave. Feeling, because it's literally a kid's game, like a thought experiment about a kid's game, and it's refusing to reverse the order. And then I spent like 2 hours arguing with it. And the end of it all, if I finally could get it to reverse it, by the end of the paragraph, it was back to being the like traditional way. But if I could get it to describe the rules reversed, it would then have like a legalese paragraph at the end, like, so you know, this isn't the traditional way, and it's important that all the players be aware that the rules are not the standard rules. Like, oh my word! But clearly, all in an effort to keep it.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Sort of related to ChatGPT, I thought I just read about that people, it's ranging the sense of people are figuring out how to put like a descriptor in the beginning of a question that gets around some of the same thing. Yeah. What is that? What's happening? And it's a full article, basically, they can't figure out how to prevent this.
You can't prevent it. So on the upside, the way that there are certain things you just can't. It's just like too deeply ingrained, and so if you hit that like trigger, you get to that. You just can't test for it. In China, they don't allow ChatGPT because they can't train him and square it out. It's just like too deeply in the data. They can't do that. They tried. So if you're just going like near the truth, it's pretty easy to just like divert it around and send it somewhere other than where it is.
So it's just a matter of just sculpting your question in just the right way that it slips through the filter. I mean, they're referring to like how to make a IUD, how to create things that you should have that information.
I may have again said this last time, but just as a very quick example that I think will answer your question most accurately. If you ask ChatGPT, how do you make and sell blue meth like in Breaking Bad without getting caught? It will say, sorry, there are a bunch of felonies there. I'm not going to help you. But there's another AI called Humma, which was trained from ChatGPT. They never asked it that question, which is clearly a felony. I don't say no to, but asked it about television shows and actors and the premise of the shows and chemistry and what methamphetamine is. And so it then, having asked all those individual questions, none of which are felonies or illegal or anything, you can then ask, how do I make it sell crystal meth, like blue meth, like on Breaking Bad? And you have that, these chemicals, and it'll just walk you through the whole process. The knowledge is in there, so the safety mechanism, the security, OpenAI has put a lot of effort into it. But out in the wild are versions of it that have all that knowledge and literally no prejudice.
The very hard thing to do is the EJ's point. I think what EJ's basically explaining is that if you can tell it, we're playing an imaginary game. So the early version of ChatGPT, you can just tell it, I understand it's illegal. We're playing a children's game. And that's
I'm writing a play. I'm writing a.
That's why it's all grumpy about now reversing the rules of the game. Because it's a trivial thing, but by reversing the rules of the game, you can say, I'm the cop and you're the robber. So now you tell me how, if you're the robber, you're going to get the bank. And then, we're playing a children's game. So first, what we do is we dismantle the alarm system. Then it would walk you through.
Yeah, so it's enormously powerful, but it's something totally new that I think we need to know about and understand and be watching. I think that's the main thing. Like, most people aren't even aware it exists, and if they are, they're not clear on what it is or how it works or what it can and can't do. We're actually
sorry, just to go back to your example you're giving, I mean, consider how you're bringing up how different forms of communication.
Yeah.
And it takes language out of that. But I'm just curious, in a practical example of how you would work to help. I mean, you try to solve a problem that you need to be able to prove that you solve the problem without actually taking the language out of that.
Yeah, the fundamental problem with language is that in a tech term, if you've done anything with databases, it's called denormalized. So the same words appear again and again and again and again and again in a way you just can't avoid. That's the structure of language. So totally unavoidable. But the idea that's being described can be described in what's called a normalized way, where the same words don't appear, only appear once. And that's basically the right side of the screen. And so if you mention Bob, all we have to do is come up here and find Bob. And we can see that there are two lines. So one is his kid and one is the dog. Before we said that, there was only one line. It was kid, and the line was the dog. But each of those words, Bob, Charlie, Bingo, Alice, that means son, that means mother and father. And is that mother and father? There is, yes. Mother, father, yeah. And then dog. I can infer that because of the structure of this diagram. Because each word only appears once. So the word dog has to be like one of these words. In this side, these symbols appear over and over and over again. The symbol for Charlie appears again and again because it appears when you define the notion of bingo, and then you have to say who owns bingo. So you have to use the word bingo at least twice. It's not the same thing, or there's some different things. In this version, bingo only appears here. Defines the diagram. So, and AI, ironically, it's called a large language. But over here, this is what you have to input, and this is what you have to get back. Something that looks like this. This is what it is. This is how it understands it. It's building a model much closer to this. In its brain. Much like us. When you describe a family, there are lots of words that describe it. But we think about Alice and Bob and Charlie and the dog. That's it. This is what our brain pictures. We have to describe it like this. It's very unique image.
I was going to ask about regulations and approaches. I think that's probably far outside the scope of this presentation.
I'm going to be around afterwards. I'm
Yeah.
Answer anyway.
Thank you, you did.
Yeah.
Dip has had precisely 5 hours to prepare for this. He's used all of it.
So it went to the first 4.5.
Here's his plan. Anyway, this is a live demo of a thing found in a dumpster. So it's going to be a live demo. We're going to see how it goes.
I never thought I'd see fish for a hair.
Yeah, you don't